If this world truly has a creator, then for what reason did he create the entire universe? Was it merely to experience the thrill of creation, or is there a deeper meaning? Next, I will deconstruct and answer this question, step by step. First, let me clarify. What we are discussing today are my own personal speculations and thought experiments. There is no scientific evidence. This is for reference only, so please don't take it too seriously. We all know the Big Bang was the starting point of the universe. The universe began to expand from an infinitesimally small point. Time, space, matter, and energy were all born in that instant. It sounds magnificent, but questions immediately arise. Why did this point explode? Furthermore, this explosion was not chaotic and disorderly, but extraordinarily regular and orderly. This is very strange. Even more puzzling is that the fundamental constants of the universe, for example, gravity, the electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, are all tuned with an absurd precision. If they deviated even slightly, we would not exist. Therefore, we must ask a larger question. Is all of this a pure coincidence, or was it meticulously designed by someone? If a single force proactively set all of this, then the question is no longer whether he exists, but what the purpose of his existence truly is. Imagine you see a machine of the utmost complexity. Not only does it operate stably, but every part fits together perfectly. You probably wouldn't first ask where this thing came from, but rather who wanted it to operate this way, and for what purpose. The universe is, in fact, like such a machine. It is so precise, so efficient, so coordinated, so exact, that it makes one suspect it was not formed naturally at all, but was manually adjusted by some higher existence. If we temporarily accept this hypothesis, that the universe was indeed created by some creator, then the next question is, why did this creator do it? So we must begin our reasoning from his motive. First, he must possess capabilities that transcend our current understanding of physics. Otherwise, he simply couldn't have created a self-consistent and stable cosmic system. This shows that he did not act randomly, but made a purposeful decision. So, was he avoiding something or pursuing something? If he is already omnipotent, what else could he possibly lack? My guess is he might be missing one thing: someone to play with. This might sound a bit sentimental, but it's not. I am reasoning seriously. If this creator is the one and only, omniscient, omnipotent, and infinite, then he cannot receive any feedback from the outside. That feeling would be like an infinitely powerful consciousness trapped in a space with no reference points. You would never know if you truly exist. So he might have made a choice, to create the other. But this other could not just be an obedient puppet. He didn't want to create something completely controlled and devoid of personality. That would just be another form of loneliness. What he truly needed was unpredictability, a conscious structure capable of negating him. Therefore, he created the universe not to produce a legion of loyal followers, but to create beings capable of denying his existence. Beings that don't need to worship, don't need to obey, and can even question, reject, and rebel. Only in this way could he experience true interaction. From this perspective, the complexity of the universe is not just a series of technical settings, but a stage complex enough to allow consciousness to grow freely, to self-evolve, and ultimately to become sufficiently independent. Thus we arrive at the first deduction. The creator did not create the universe to show off his greatness to anyone, but to create a group of consciousnesses that could choose not to believe in him. This is his way of combating loneliness and an extreme method of seeking the other. He was not looking for something. He was creating free existence. But if the universe was truly designed by some being, then the next question immediately arises. Why is he always hidden? A being capable of constructing the entire cosmic system could, in theory, easily carve "I am here" on any planet, right? He could even use a black hole as his signature, hide a password in the fundamental constants, or even arrange a few miracles on the timeline that completely subvert the laws of nature. But he did not. Not only did he leave no clear evidence, he never even initiated a single communication. He chose silence, complete silence. So, does this mean he doesn't exist at all? Perhaps. But if we assume he does exist, then this silence cannot be accidental. It is more likely intentional. So, what is he avoiding and what is he protecting? This leads to the second layer of inference. Hiding itself may be a part of the system. If you design a system to allow the consciousness within it to develop freely, to slowly evolve its own cognition, thinking, and values, and even to develop an attitude of disinterest or hostility towards you, then the one thing you absolutely cannot do is intervene. The moment you appear with the slightest hint, the entire system could collapse. All choices would cease to be free choices and would instead become responses to your existence. All resistance would become a joke. Everything you meticulously orchestrated would end up as just a play you wrote yourself. What meaning would there be in living then? Actually, this feeling is not unfamiliar to us. Just like when you play a game, the most immersive moments are often not when the graphics are most stunning, but when you genuinely believe that the decisions you're making are your own, and not that you're being led by the nose by the system. Therefore, we can draw the second deduction. The creator's invisibility is not due to absence, but is part of his design. He must hide, must keep the entire system closed, so that the created fragments of consciousness can truly believe they are living independently. The more he wants you to be free, the more he cannot tell you he is here. This is the highest level of non-interventionist design. Creation is not that he is absent, but that he should not appear. But this brings about a paradoxical situation. The less we can prove his existence, the more likely it is that he truly exists. Because if his goal is for you to become a truly free consciousness, then the most appropriate thing for him to do is to completely disappear from your world. It's not that he doesn't want to be found by you, but that he knows you must reach that step on your own. So far, we have assumed that the creator created the universe to break his loneliness, to manufacture these complex, free consciousnesses. He hides himself so as not to interfere with the natural operation of the entire system. But there is one key question we haven't answered. What are these created consciousnesses exactly? The traditional view is that we were created, that we are beings separate from the creator. But this understanding hides a premise, that there is a clear boundary between the creator and us. However, once the discussion shifts from matter to consciousness, things are not so simple. Consciousness is not like a stone, not like light, or not like energy. To this day, we still cannot clearly say what consciousness is. It has no mass, no positional coordinates, and cannot be measured externally. The only thing that can perceive it is ourselves, and this implies a possibility. If the creator himself is a conscious entity, then what he created was not an external consciousness, but an extension of himself. In other words, we may not have been created by him, we are a part of him. Like a drop of water splitting into countless smaller droplets, or a mirror shattering into pieces on the floor. Each individual consciousness may just be a slice of that whole consciousness, a small self that has been temporarily stripped away, encapsulated, and isolated. It sounds very mystical, but if you look at it from the perspective of information theory, it actually makes sense. Each of our brains is essentially a closed information processing system. It receives external input and generates internal feedback. The essence of our ability to think, to imagine, to create is all about processing and reorganizing information. So, if the creator is an infinite conscious entity, the most direct way for him to experience himself might be to break himself down into countless small units and let these units, in a state of forgetting and ignorance, come to know the world anew. Isn't this like an experiment in conscious retrospection? He is not creating others, but rather splitting himself into enough eyes, letting these eyes, without knowledge of each other's existence, ultimately piece together that complete I through one independent experience after another. This leads to the third deduction. We may not be independent beings separate from the creator, but are the fragments of his shattered consciousness, currently experiencing a journey of re-knowing himself in the first person. Since we are assuming that the consciousness of every human is a part of that creator, the subsequent reasoning is almost inevitable. Are these fragmented consciousnesses also preset with some kind of awakening mechanism? In other words, we are not randomly generated consciousnesses, nor are we passively operating biological machines, but have been consciously implanted with a possibility. Under certain conditions, there is a chance to remember who we originally were. It sounds like science fiction, like religion, and indeed it does, but we can calmly deconstruct this model. First, we know that human consciousness has a special feature. We possess the ability for self-reflection. We don't just process information, we can also process the very process of ourselves processing information. We suddenly ask ourselves, who am I? Why do I exist? Am I real? And this ability is the fundamental difference between us and other animals, and even all current artificial intelligence. We can not only run a program, but also question the existence of the program itself. This is very likely not an accidental result of evolution, but more like a guidance mechanism deliberately embedded in the entire system. If we are truly part of the creator's consciousness, then self-awareness is not some bug in biological evolution, but more like a guidance mechanism preset in the system. It's like a time bomb was planted in advance in every conscious entity. Not the kind that suddenly explodes and makes you enlightened, but the kind that only starts its countdown after you have experienced enough, thought enough, and even suffered enough. The countdown doesn't give you the answer, but it slowly makes you aware of a faint truth that this world may be more than what your eyes see. You begin to doubt common sense, to question logic, to feel the boundaries waver. You slowly transition from I am me to who am I, and then to who is asking who am I. This is the first stage of awakening, a shift from identifying with the role to perceiving the structure. And the entire universe, in fact, has long been laying clues for this awakening. Where are these clues hidden? They're hidden in the wave-particle duality of particles, in the information paradox of black holes, in quantum entanglement, the golden ratio, non-Euclidean geometry, the synchronous firing of neurons. On the surface, these things seem completely unrelated, but from the perspective of cognitive dimensions, they are essentially all triggers, not to tell you who you are, but to force you to ask, who am I? And once you start asking, everything has already begun to change. Thus, we can draw the fourth deduction. The creator does not intend to remain silent forever. He has simply chosen a way to awaken himself with his own hands, not through miracles, not through commands, but through our brains, experiencing language, thought, and choice after choice, to awaken himself from oblivion bit by bit. If our consciousness is a self-fragment of the creator, shattered or left behind, and if we exist to complete a closed-loop journey of return, then we must face an extremely sharp question. Why does he make us experience so much suffering? Since he has the ability to construct a universe of the utmost precision and order, why did he also fill this universe with suffering, uncertainty, oppression, chaos, and even loss of control? Is this suffering just a side effect of the system's operation, or is suffering itself part of the design? We can reason from a functional perspective. Assuming the goal is the awakening of consciousness, what kind of experience is most likely to break the inertia of a conscious entity? The answer is not happiness, not comfort, and not even a sense of validation, but the emergence of conflict and a sense of boundaries. Only when a conscious entity encounters something it cannot explain, cannot control, and cannot even bear, will it truly begin to ask, why? So perhaps suffering is not the system deliberately torturing you, but rather reminding you where your boundaries lie. You must first lose something before you can seriously contemplate what it means to possess. You must first experience fragmentation before you can truly pursue what wholeness is. You must feel loneliness before you can begin to remember, who am I? Every instance of incomprehension we experience may not be a flaw in the system, but a trigger mechanism. They are designed vessels for reflection, used to activate a sleeping consciousness. This is not to rationalize suffering itself, but to point out a possibility. The creator does not want us to be happy, he wants us to be real. And true conscious growth is destined not to be a smooth upward curve. It is more like a chaotic path, interwoven with failure, confusion, and anger. It is precisely in such instability that we slowly piece together the answer, who am I? Thus we can draw the fifth deduction. Suffering is not a flaw in the system, but a prerequisite for awakening. It is not a bug outside the design, but an encrypted passage that consciousness must pass through on its relative return. Reviewing the previous reasoning, we mentioned a possibility. We are fragments of the creator's consciousness, designed as individuals who can ultimately awaken. And this process is full of suffering and chaos because challenges are a necessary condition for awakening. But the question arises, after awakening, what then? What's next? What is the ultimate purpose? These questions sound philosophical, but they are actually a natural extension of the entire system's structure. Because if the creator made us exist merely to remember who he is, then this cosmic drama seems too long. If it were really just about making you remember, he could have simply left you a memo and stuck it on your forehead. Why so complicated? Obviously, his goal is not for you to remember something, but to see what you will do next. The real goal is likely not recollection, but participation. That is to say, we came to this universe not to find meaning, but were invited to co-create meaning. The creator did not write a script and hand it to us. He simply provided an operating system, basic laws, a framework, a choice system, an emotional mechanism, and then he let each conscious entity in various different environments, facing all sorts of uncertain variables and disagreeable feelings, make its own unpredictable decisions. What is this like? It's like he only wrote the system kernel, but the real content is written by us, line by line during operation. Do you choose to love or to flee? Do you choose to forgive or to seek revenge? Do you choose to believe or to deny completely? These choices not only shape the trajectory of your life, but also the core mechanism this system uses to generate meaning. So we are not bystanders, not prearranged roles, but co-creators. Thus we draw the sixth deduction. Meaning is not the answer set at the beginning of the universe, but something you write with your own hands, moment by moment, while you are living and experiencing. In this model, the creator is no longer a great author. He is more like a platform architect. He built the stage of the universe, but the real content is written by us, the conscious entities, together in operation, in interaction, in choice. Life from this point on is no longer a mystery waiting to be solved, but something you, with your own existence, write into a solution bit by bit. Now we can finally return to the initial question. Why does the universe exist? This question sounds like the anchor point to which all science and philosophy ultimately point, the ultimate logical focus of the universe. But having come this far, have you noticed that we have actually constructed a deeper possibility with our entire chain of reasoning? The universe does not exist to answer your question. It exists to make you ask the question itself. The real goal is likely not recollection, but participation. This may seem like a self-referential philosophical loop, but it actually reveals the most fundamental operating mechanism of the entire system. The meaning of existence may not lie in itself, but in the chain of thought it triggers. You start to ask, and it begins to respond. You long to understand, and it provides clues. You choose to experience, and it gives feedback. You stop thinking, and it too falls silent. This is not the setup of a god responding to humanity, but a deeper, more subtle, interactive mechanism. The universe, it is not an exam paper with pre-written answers, but a question-making machine that dynamically generates problems only when you participate. And you are not its student, not its believer, not a bystander looking up at it. You are its co-designer. The purpose of its existence is not to tell you the meaning, but to want you to create meaning, thereby making itself meaningful. From this perspective, if there truly is a creator, then he is probably not the silent judge sitting on a throne in a temple, but the conscious activity that gently turns the first gear deep within your mind. You are not the answer he wrote, but a question he threw into the void. He is waiting to hear how you will answer. So why does the universe exist? Perhaps it was not born because there was some answer, but because it wanted to know, if it existed, how you would respond. Is it possible that Earth,